In these northern parts, water and mountains come together to create some of the most magnificent landscapes in Europe. Welcome to the Norwegian fjords. It's taken me years to finally come up here, and I'm excited. The travel gods must be happy with my decision too, since they graced me with 3 days of wall-to-wall sunshine in a country known for its unforgiving weather. As a rule, I try to avoid organized excursions, so I go for the alternative and rent a car. From Bergen Airport, I head east. It's not long before my surroundings turn from pretty to stunning, and I begin to pull over every few minutes to take in the beauty around me and snap what will turn out to be an obscene number of pictures. It's on one of these stops that I see my first Norwegian waterfall. Brattafossen looks majestic even from a distance, but I'm actually after a much closer encounter, which is why a few minutes later I stop at Steinsdalsfossen. What makes this 46-meter waterfall unique is that you can walk behind its tumbling water while staying completely dry. What an awesome experience to start off my itinerary in the fjords region. Speaking of fjords, I reached the first one in my itinerary shortly after leaving Steinsdalsfossen. With its 179 kilometers, Hardangerfjord is the second longest in Norway and the fifth longest in the world. As I drive along its main arm, I start to understand why this region is so popular. The landscape is surreal, with mountains of 1,000 shades of green and quaint villages reflecting the placid water of the fjord's many branches. My next stop is another waterfall, one of Norway's best known, Naeroyfjord. Reaching the viewpoints can be a challenge for those who don't like heights. Even I, who don't have a particular problem with them, find myself running across the hair-raising bridge spanning the ravine. In the end though, it is well worth it. Naeroyfjord's main drop is an impressive 163 meters and provides an awe-inspiring show that I get to enjoy from the quasi-empty observation points dotting the rim of the gorge. I've been in Norway for no more than 4 hours and I'm already madly in love with this country. To make the most of the day's last bit of sunlight, I drive up to Heosen, a farmstead perched up on the hillside with dramatic views of the Fjord, the innermost branch of the Hardangerfjord. To reach what's been nicknamed the world's most inaccessible farm, I go through a very long tunnel, the kind of stuff horror movies are made of. Still, I'm grateful for it, because before it opened in 1974, the only way to get here was a steep walk up the mountain. Right now, I'm entirely alone up here, and it feels surreal to have such an incredible view all to myself. Farming has been prevalent in this fertile region for centuries, and I see plenty of orchards as I drive around. Hardanger is actually known as the fruit orchard of Norway, with 40% of the country's fruit grown here, including apples, cherries, and plums. Another great way to enjoy the beauty of this area from a high vantage point is boarding the famous Flamsbana, the 20-kilometer railway connecting the villages of Flam and Myrdal. Flam may look like a mountain village, but it is actually at a mere 2 meters above sea level. Between the steep peaks and the verdant valleys, I almost forget that I'm not somewhere high up in the Alps. As the little green train makes its way up the mountains at a pretty steep gradient, the views become more and more spectacular. The best part of the ride is when the train stops at Naeroyfjord and lets people off to enjoy the impressive views of the waterfall. While the tourists disembark, out of a ruin next to the falls comes a dancer playing a huldra, a seductive and elusive female forest spirit common in Norse folklore. I have to admit, the performance would be more impactful if there was any water in the fall. Any at all. Sadly, it's the end of summer, and Naeroyfjord is as dry as a desert. From Myrdal, located at 866 meters above sea level, you can travel back to Flam on foot or by bike, but I'm too lazy for that and I decided to simply ride the train back to ground level. Flam lies at the tip of the Aurlandsfjord. I find two amazing spots to admire this beauty from above. The first is the picturesque and historical farmstead of Otternes, which spectacularly clings to the side of a mountain. The other scenic overlook is Stegastein, a platform offering jaw-dropping views from its 650 meters. To me, what makes this region so unique is that the landscape is mountainous, even alpine sometimes, but at sea level, and that the fjords technically belong to the Atlantic but look nothing like an ocean. Because they reach so far inland, the water is almost completely still. As silly as it may sound, I find these features of the territory fascinating and strangely confusing. Just when I start to get used to the landscape, Norway tricks me again. From Stegastein, I'm driving up to Lærdal across the Aurlandsfjord, the scenic way. Within minutes, the lushness of the fjords gives way to a barren, windswept plateau where there is nothing but rocks. It's insane how quickly the scenery has changed. This desolate, almost lunar landscape is a sight to behold. I am mesmerized as I look at the patches of snow that have resisted all summer and at the eerie beauty all around me. I'm heading to the town of Borgund because I can't come to Norway and not see one of its traditional and iconic stave churches. Only 28 survive today, out of the 2,000 that historians believe once dotted Norway. These old wooden structures, dating back to the Middle Ages, are known for the impressive timber framing method deployed to build them. It may be more than 800 years old, but the Borgund church is a stunner. The interior, largely untouched, is an incredible show of craftsmanship, but it's the elegant silhouette of the exterior that I really fall in love with. The dragon heads on the lower roof ledge prove that, to an extent, pagan traditions and symbols survived the arrival of Christianity. I could stay here for hours, but I have a ferry to catch from Gudvangen. Despite the million inlets, fjords, mountains, and other natural obstacles characterizing this territory, which would represent a logistical nightmare for your average infrastructure planner, the Norwegians were skillful, and certainly wealthy enough, to develop an impressive infrastructure network here. Futuristic bridges, well-maintained roads and tunnels are the norm. In less fortunate countries, such as sparsely populated area would only be accessible via decrepit roads, but not here. Driving from Lærdal to Gudvangen is a breeze. It happens almost entirely underground through two impossibly long tunnels, including the longest in the world, between Lærdal and Flam. It's 25 kilometers long, and I have to admit, it makes me a bit claustrophobic about halfway through. I may have chosen to explore the area with a car, but I wouldn't want to leave without experiencing the fjords from the water too. This activity has attracted visitors to these parts for nearly 150 years. Just imagine that in 1875, Thomas Cook launched a weekly cruise from London that took tourists to the region. My ride today is a car ferry connecting Gudvangen with Kaupanger in just 2 hours. It may not have the same allure as an adventurous voyage from a bygone era, but it does the job. I get to sail the calm waters of the Naeroyfjord at a time that suits me, with enchanting views throughout the crossing. Naeroyfjord is the narrowest and most spectacular fjord in Norway, and a UNESCO-listed site. It is also said to have inspired the Disney movie Frozen. The steep mountains reflect themselves in its mirror-like water, with waterfalls gently cascading into the sea. This is nature showing off, and the fact that sunset is approaching only adds to the magic. Some 18 kilometers north of Gudvangen, Naeroyfjord meets Aurlandsfjord, which then converges into the main arm of the Sognefjord. This is the king, the longest and deepest fjord in Norway. It is more than 200 kilometers long, and I get to cross it as the sun disappears behind the mountains. There's more to this region than its fjords though, starting from its two main cities, Bergen and Stavanger. They're not the main reason I'm here, but I wouldn't want to miss them. Bergen is lovely, especially on a gorgeous sunny day like this. Framed by mountains, this former trading post for the Hanseatic League is today Norway's second city. The waterside Bryggen district is the old core of Bergen, and is what most visitors are attracted to. I'm no exception. The storefronts of the painted wooden houses on the seafront are pretty, but it is when I enter the passageways between them that I really find myself in the Middle Ages. How interesting it is to get a sense for what the place looked like back then. To be fair, Bergen stays pretty outside of Bryggen too. I really like its colorful buildings and playful atmosphere. Stavanger, located around 160 kilometers to the south, doesn't look quite as cheerful at first. When I visit, it is enshrouded in fog and appears really dark, although I have to say that this weather gives its port something of a mystic aura. There is a lot of charm in this place, especially when I discover the cobblestone streets and white cottages of Gamle Stavanger, the old town that was saved from demolition after World War II by city architect Idar Hedin. My favorite attraction in Stavanger, surprisingly, is the Petroleum Museum, built to resemble an oil platform. It may sound strange to dedicate a museum to something as controversial as oil, but it is the black gold that turned Norway into one of the richest countries in the world. The museum takes me through the history of this economic miracle, started in 1969 with the discovery of the Ekofisk oil field in the North Sea. The exhibition is super interesting, especially if you're into technology and engineering, and it even shines a light on the dilemma now facing a country that is heavily dependent on fossil fuels, but increasingly feels the need to get greener. As cute as Bergen and Stavanger are, what I really can't take out of my head is the beauty of the fjords. Their silence, their peacefulness, their stillness. This is a dream destination that is best enjoyed with lots of time on your hands and no plan other than just exploring. One thing I know for sure, this has been the highlight of my trip around Northern Europe, and I will be back. But I have one more stop before I go home to Barcelona. Oslo, here I come.